months of being unjustly detained in Russia, held under intolerable circumstances. Brittney will soon be back in the arms of her loved ones, and she should have been there all along.
Well, breaking news this morning, two-time Olympian and Phoenix Mercury star Brittney Griner back on U.S. soil, or she's headed to U.S. soil. She is in U.S. custody after almost 10 months of being in Russian prison.
The president speaking live this morning to the public, confirming the news that it was a one-for-one prisoner swap in exchange for our Olympian, the international arms dealer Victor Bout. Still a lot of news playing out this morning, and so many efforts that we did not hear about that went into this. So team coverage continues for you this morning. Colton standing by with the latest, and we're checking in with a reporter from our Washington, D.C. bureau with more about what it took to get here. But we want to start out now with Tess, who has been tracking the latest.
Yeah, good morning, guys. It's certainly the story making headlines, not just here across Arizona, not just across the nation, but around the world. We can only imagine, right, the relief Brittney Griner and her loved ones are feeling this morning. The president releasing these photos earlier today showing that he was joined by Brittney's wife, Sherelle, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken as they spoke to Griner on the phone. The president tweeting, "She is safe. She is on a plane and on her way home." So here's what we know so far about this one-for-one swap. BG was released in exchange for international arms dealer Victor Bout. We know the agreement was negotiated in Moscow, and within the last week, the president gave final approval for this one-on-one swap. The actual exchange took place earlier today in the United Arab Emirates. So to secure Griner's release, the president ordered Victor Bout to be freed and returned to Russia. He signed off on the commutation order, cutting short his 25-year federal prison sentence, and he was being held on a slew of charges on conspiring to kill Americans, acquire and export anti-aircraft missiles, and provide material support to a terrorist organization. At this point, it's still unclear what exactly led to the breakthrough and to the final decision to release Griner. But President Biden saying it took months of hard work to get here.
This is a day we've worked toward for a long time. We never stopped pushing for her release. It took painstaking and intense negotiations, and I want to thank all the hard-working public servants across my administration who worked tirelessly to secure her release.
And as you know, Griner had been in a Russian penal colony after being found guilty on drug charges after she was found with cannabis vape cartridges in her luggage. That was in February in Moscow. So, as you can imagine, it's been a long 10 months as folks in Washington have been working to bring BG home. Colton joining us as we continue our team coverage on what's been going on behind the scenes to make this prison swap. Colton?
Yeah, Tessa, Representative Greg Stanton has been at the forefront of efforts to bring Griner home, helping get bipartisan legislation passed in Congress, pushing for her release, and he is joining us live this morning. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Just a reaction right now to this news that's not only making headlines here in the Valley, Arizona, but really across the world.
This is a beautiful day for Brittney Griner, a beautiful day for Brittney's wife, Sherelle, our friend, our fellow American who has unjustly spent almost 300 days in Russian custody, including recently in a penal colony. Our friend is coming home, and it's a beautiful day for her wife, Phoenix, all of Phoenicians, and all of America.
We know that you were at the forefront of bipartisan legislation to really help spearhead the effort to bring her back home. Tell us, how closely involved were you with these negotiations, if any, and also if you were part of the delegation who knew a week ago that the president was going to sign off on this?
Well, I'm not going to talk about anything that's classified, but here's what I will say. We did get Congress to pass in a bipartisan way an important resolution a few months ago saying that we needed Brittney Griner home, we demanded her release, and that we would support the president and this administration to do what it takes to bring Brittney Griner home. These decisions are not easy, but when you have a fellow American wrongly in custody, unjustly in custody, we need to do everything we can to bring our fellow Americans home. And obviously we're going to continue to work to bring home Paul Whelan, another American that is unjustly in the prison system in Russia right now.
Yeah, exactly. With Paul Whelan coming up next, a lot of people wondering, oh, you know, he probably doesn't even know that he was left out of this because he's in a hospital now. What are the talks like right now in terms of that effort on getting him back?
Well, the key is that there are talks going on, that there is a horrific war going on with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Some thought that that meant that there could not be diplomacy between the United States and Russia during this time, and obviously that's not the case. We are able to continue to have these delicate discussions and negotiations to allow for prisoner exchanges. Those discussions, thank God for the leadership of UAE, who helped act as an intermediary to bring Brittney Griner home. Thank God that we still have the ability to have those conversations, even in light of this horrific war, so that we can continue to fight to bring our fellow Americans home. And we're not giving up. Look, Brittney Griner is a personal friend of mine because we got to know each other when I was mayor of Phoenix and a season ticket holder for the Mercury, and I'm just a big basketball fan and love to see her personal and professional development over the years. So I'm, you know, for me personally, I just what an incredible day to see my friend released and on her way home to the United States of America. But we will not ever stop in the fight to bring all of our fellow Americans who are wrongfully detained in Russia and around the world. And this shows that American diplomacy works and can work well. And that's a great day for this country.
I do have one more question really quickly, Representative. In a lot of conversations now taking place about the swap for an international arms dealer known as Merchant of Death. A lot of people wondering what kind of precedent this will send, especially when it comes to you know, those who are targeting Americans. Any comments on that and how this could play out in the future for future talks?
The resolution that we passed through the House, again, it was a bipartisan resolution, specifically authorized and supported the president to do what it takes to bring Brittney Griner home. We needed to show the president and this administration that Congress, representing the American people, had their back to make these tough decisions to bring our fellow American who was wrongfully detained home. So that's really the precedent that I say is to our Americans. Hope and pray that this never happens to any of our fellow Americans. But if it does, America will not forget you, and we will fight for you to bring you home. That's the precedent that I think is set today by this president, this administration. And I want to say one more thing. I've gotten to know Brittney's agent, Lindsay Colas, throughout this process. She's a hero. We should all be so lucky to have an advocate like Lindsay fighting for their client throughout this whole endeavor. And I just want to say how much I respect her and honor her today. And also Sherelle, Brittney's wife. She has acted with such dignity and grace and courage and strength throughout this horrific ordeal. And I just honor Sherelle today as well. What a beautiful day for Brittney and Sherelle.
All right, Representative, thank you so much for joining us on Good Morning Arizona this morning. Thank you.
And speaking of the Suns and the Mercury, we've been watching the players, and in particular, Chris Paul, the first from the Suns to tweet some kind of a reaction. And at this point, you can just see the praying hands emoji, the thankful emoji. So let me show you some of the other local reactions here from Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. Our superstar is coming home. Heartfelt gratitude to POTUS, President Biden, and Representative Stanton for making this joyous day happen. And then from the governor's office, Doug Ducey, he tweeted this: excellent news. Arizona looks forward to welcoming Brittney home. And then Ruben Gallego, representative from Arizona, today is a joyous day. Thanks for the relentless efforts by the Biden administration. We also have seen some other reaction, especially across the sports world, as we've seen many show their support for Brittney Griner. RG3, Robert Griffin III, Brittney Griner finally coming home, thank God. And then this was interesting. Billie Jean King, Brittney Griner is free after 294 days. Coming up in the next hour, we'll share with you some of the tweets from her fellow teammates, and then also really across the sports world, because we saw so many, not just the WNBA, but the NBA, and also many other athletes showing their support for not just a Mercury player, but an Olympian.
Phoenix Mercury releasing their schedule just last week, and we want to check in, as mentioned, with Mark, who is taking a look at this from the sports perspective. And it's really at the center of this. Mark, it revealed so much about the pay disparity that the female athletes have between their male colleagues, needing to play in the off season so regularly, as they all do, the superstars.
No, certainly, and that's why Brittney Griner was over in Russia and had gone over there during a tumultuous time, a time of war, and 294 days exactly since she was detained in Russia, and she is coming home. So the sports world reacting with a lot of joy this morning on social media. I do want to read a statement from Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner. This just in, quote, "There has not been a day over the past 10 months where we haven't all had Brittney on our hearts and minds, and that has now turned into a collective wave of joy and relief knowing that she will soon be reunited with her family, the WNBA player community, and friends. BG has shown extraordinary courage and dignity in the face of enormous adversity. The WNBA is grateful beyond measure to the Biden administration, the special presidential envoy for hostage affairs, and all those who have played a role in bringing BG home today." The WNBA, as you can imagine, on social media, very active. Brianna Stewart from Seattle putting up just a note of extreme approval, and Sue Bird as well, and then her teammates like Brianna Turner putting up praying hands, Chris Paul putting up praying hands as well, as the sports world reacts to Brittney Griner coming home after 294 days in custody. There was one piece of social media that Micah Parsons, the linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, expressed some regret that Paul Whelan did not come home. He has left the tweet up and said he comes from a military family and was a little miffed that they left a Marine behind. That was his exact quote on social media, but he has since apologized for that tweet, clarified it, and that's prompted a lot of discussion here on social media. But it is great news here in the Valley of the Sun. After 294 days, Brittney Griner is coming home and will be home for the holidays.
Hey, Mark, yeah, there's a lot of people saying that about Paul Whelan. I wanted to ask you a question because there's a lot of criticism on social media from people saying that Brittney Griner did not want the national anthem played, and so they really were upset about that. I didn't remember that. Was that a big story in the WNBA?
Yeah, it was in the bubble in the WNBA during COVID when the WNBA resumed, and there was a lot of discussion, and she's certainly been in the middle of headlines for that and for the detention. And I mean, the last time we saw her on the court for the Phoenix Mercury, they were playing the WNBA Finals, so she's certainly been in the headlines, and we look forward to just hearing from Brittney Griner. I mean, we haven't heard from her since the September before, when they were in the WNBA Finals, and then she went to Russia, and going to be very interested to hear her perspective here. I would imagine she's going to get home, spend some time with her family,
right,
and then hopefully start doing some interviews to hear what this was like and what her perspective what her perspective is now.
We all know how athletes take care of themselves, and the physical kind of teams that support performing at your highest level. As a professional athlete, obviously, what she was experiencing over the last 10 months has been the opposite of that. So it'll remain to be seen if she's able to return to the sport where she shines so bright, right?
Right. I mean, and you think about, I mean, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to, I mean, she had to go to a Russian work camp. There were reports of that. So I think the most important thing is getting her back. And then, Monty Williams has talked about this a couple times, how much at the Suns facility they were actually praying for Brittney Griner, just her safe return. So I think everybody is more concerned with that at this point, and basketball comes second after.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right,
indeed.
Mark. Well, appreciate your insight.
Thanks,
Thank you. All right, it's a story we've been following all morning long. Phoenix Mercury star Brittney Griner now on her way back to home soil following nearly 300 days of detainment in Russia. So the Biden administration making the announcement early this morning alongside Griner's wife, Sherelle.
So our team coverage is continuing this morning. Tess with more on what one Arizona politician has to say about his fight for Griner's release. And he joined us earlier this morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. Today would have marked 294 days since Brittney Griner was detained in Russia. And through all of these months, negotiations between Russia and the United States, they've been continuing. There was never a stop in this. One of those behind the scenes fighting for her to be freed has been Representative Greg Stanton. He's been on the forefront of the efforts helping get bipartisan legislation passed in Congress, pushing for her release. And Stanton joined us earlier right here on Good Morning Arizona.
Well, I'm not going to talk about anything that's classified, but here's what I will say. We did get Congress to pass in a bipartisan way an important resolution a few months ago saying that we needed Brittney Griner home, we demanded her release, and that we would support the president of this administration to do what it takes to bring Brittney Griner home. These decisions are not easy, but when you have a fellow American wrongly in custody, unjustly in custody, we need to do everything we can to bring our fellow Americans home. And obviously, we're going to continue to work to bring home Paul Whelan, another American that is unjustly in the prison system in Russia right now.
So while the Griner family will be celebrating the holidays with Brittney back home, there are still U.S. prisoners detained in Russia, and that includes former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, who you just heard Representative Greg Stanton mention. So this morning we're hearing from the Whelan family for the first time since BG's release was announced. And moments ago, we're also learning about details from CNN on an exclusive phone call with Paul Whelan from Russia. So let's check in with Colton with more on this team coverage. Colton?
Yeah, that's right, Tess. Paul Whelan has spoken out following Griner's release. Take a look. In a phone call with CNN, he says, quote, "I am greatly disappointed that more has not been done to secure my release, especially as the 4-year anniversary of my arrest is coming up." Going on to say, "I was arrested for a crime that never occurred." He says that he was told that because the Russians have him accused of being a spy, he's being held at a higher level than Griner. And also Trevor Reed, another person who was released earlier this year. You may recall his case. Also a U.S. Marine veteran. He was released from a Russian prison back in April. He spent nearly 1,000 days behind bars before he was freed in a prisoner swap. Reed spoke out about the conditions Griner was facing, saying Russian detention centers and labor camps are dirty, saying the food is rotten and the guards hate Americans. Now, Whelan's brother spoke with CNN early this morning and called Griner's release great news, but said that he does worry about the future.
We do worry about what's in Paul's future. I think it's become clear that the U.S. doesn't have any concessions that the Russian government wants for Paul, and so I'm not really sure what the future holds.
Now, Whelan, a U.S. citizen and former Marine, was detained at a Moscow hotel in December 2018 and then arrested on espionage charges, which he has always denied. He was sentenced in June 2020 to 16 years in prison. We found out that Whelan had some health issues and was taken to a prison hospital. His family says that he was able to call home several days ago after not hearing from him for about a week. Now, President Biden touched on that case during today's announcement, saying the U.S. is still fighting to get him freed.
We never forgot about Brittney. We've not forgotten about Paul Whelan, who's been unjustly detained in Russia for years. This was not a choice of which American to bring home. We brought home Trevor Reed when we had a chance early this year. Sadly, for totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittney's. And while we have not yet succeeded in securing Paul's release, we are not giving up.
President Biden assuring Americans that he would continue to work to bring all wrongfully convicted or held Americans overseas home. The president also issuing his own warning for Americans traveling overseas.
We also want to prevent any more American families from suffering this pain and separation. And I strongly urge all Americans to take precautions, including reviewing the State Department's travel advisories before they travel overseas, which now includes warnings about the risk of being wrongfully detained by a foreign government.
In her own statements, Sherelle said that she and Brittney will remain committed to getting every American home as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Colton. Going through social media, looking at some of the reactions happening. This is from the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, saying there has not been a day in the past month where we all haven't had Brittney on our minds. A wave of joy and relief, knowing that she will soon be reunited with her family. It goes on to talk about courage and dignity, and then in the end saying, our hope is that Paul Whelan and every wrongfully detained American will be returned home safely. Also, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, Brittney had to endure some unimaginable situations. We're thrilled that she is on her way home to her family and friends.